We are back. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I have been away, as you may know, on vacation, hence a little bit less Warpforge content of late, but I cannot wait to get into it with you guys today. Finally, slightly delayed than normal, I am bringing you my full thoughts today on the Adepta Sororitas faction and full card review. So I'm super excited to get into this with you guys. I've not really been able to share many thoughts on the faction. And yeah, we're going to go through and we're going to review each card on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being unplayable, 2 being it's a pretty bad card, 3 being it's okay, meh, you know, nothing overwhelming but not bad, sort of average card. 4 being a good card, 4 are the kind of cards that make up the staple of most decks, and 5 are those kind of like S tier. This is what you're here for, meta-defining cards. So we're going to get into that, and I'm going to give you a bit on my overall thoughts about the faction as well so far. I do have all of the warlords and all the legendaries bar 1. So I've pretty much got a full collection, and I have been playing on my mobile while I've been on holiday and gathering lots of thoughts on the faction for you. So we're going to jump into all that in this video. Please like and subscribe, and just before we dive in, I just want to remind you that this Saturday, the 8th of June, we are going to be having my 1k subs celebration stream. So I just want to say a massive thank you again to everybody who has subscribed to my channel. It's been a hell of a ride. I started doing this, guys, at the start of early access, and you guys have been brilliant. It's made it a lot of fun making content for you all, and I just wanted to do something cool. So we're going to do a 12-hour streamathon starting at 12 p.m. GMT, and we're going to be doing some booster giveaways, which EG are supporting. Lots of fun games planned with chat, but I'm also going to have a lot of guest drop-ins through the day. So the idea is everybody, the names that you've seen on my channel over the last 8 months, they're going to be making a guest appearance. We're going to have all sorts of fun, like challenge matches, some tournament-style games, some fun themed stuff, a whole range of stuff. And it's going to be a really, really cool day. Hopefully have a few drinks and lots of food and a bit of celebration too. So I hope you can join. That's all happening this Saturday, 8th of June, 12 p.m. GMT. Now, guys, let us dive into the Adepta Sororitas full card review. So overall, there's a lot that I like about the faction, and I think fundamentally, I actually think that the warlord design is really interesting and overall pretty well done, right? Like, if you think about the ability to pray and get an ability from that, then you get an ability from talent, and of course you can attack either way. So what I kind of like is that the warlords are becoming, from Tau and into Sisters, we're starting to see the warlords become more flexible, right, and have more options in terms of things they can do. And I really like the way that they've kind of nailed that design with the Adepta Sororitas, and I think it plays in really well into the different styles. So I'll talk more about the individual warlords, obviously, when it comes to reviewing the cards. But I just think overall, like, I really do like the design. I think in a vacuum, the kind of warlord design itself is actually very, very good. Another thing I really have enjoyed about the Sisters of Battle is that they are starting to kind of like look at the later game cards and try to find ways they can be a little bit more playable than they probably have been in the starter factions, so that's pretty nice too. Now, as it says here, it's hard to have faith sometimes. The biggest disappointment with this faction is that they have gone for something pretty cool with the faith system, but I think ultimately in the execution of it, they've failed to do it effectively, and that's kind of disappointing and a little bit sad. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it's incredibly hard to gain faith from the current system. The ways in which you gain faith are all of the kind of like cheat ways, right? Like playing prayer on your unit, or hitting yourself with a Domitas, or using the St. Catherine card to just give yourself 4. But the idea of I play a card, then it has to survive, then next turn I don't attack and trade, and then it has to survive, and then I get a faith point. That does not happen in the game of Warpforge. That is so fundamentally against the flow of the back and forth in Warpforge that it is pretty much a pipe dream to kind of like establish a good build of faith. And the only real chance that you've got to do in it is things like having multiple faith, multiple units praying at once, so you kind of go wide and your opponent can only deal with so many things, and so one or two get through, and that's basically the only sort of strategy that you can employ. And I think it's a bit disappointing that it's such a cool concept, but the execution of it it's very difficult to do. The other element of it is that some of the cards seem to be very all or nothing with the faith. So, you know, you think about something like the Exorcist, for example. The Exorcist is like, if you've got 8 faith, it's got an amazing ability. If you don't have 8, so if you've got 7 faith, it basically is useless. It basically does nothing. And I think that's a real missed opportunity. One exception is a card like the Canoness, I think of, for example, where it gives you multiple levels of faith. And I think that was a real missed opportunity to kind of have a lower level benchmark of if you've got 1 or 2 points of faith, it gives you a slight enhanced ability, and then maybe more at 3 or 4, or at 5 or 6, something like that. So I would have actually loved to have seen throughout the faction a lot more kind of like, if you've got 2 faith, it does this, if you've got 4 faith, it does this, and if you've got 6, it does this. I think going above that, I think 8 faith is really asking a lot, particularly in the new system. Now, if they make buffs to the way in which faith works, then perhaps, you know, in a future video I might be saying that actually getting 8 faith is not quite as harsh as it seems. But in the current system, it's almost it's just a pipe dream, especially playing against a really good player, human player on ladder. Like, it's just not gonna, with a good deck, it's just not gonna happen. So it's hard to have faith sometimes, and it really just leads to what to me has been a fun kind of faction to tinker with, to kind of like not being able to really play them on ladder much, to be honest. So it's overall quite disappointing. But that said, I do think that, and I do hope that EG will kind of like learn from that and take on board like feedback from the community, and hopefully we will see this faction become a really great and fun faction to use once some tweaks have been made to the system. So that's just like some overall thoughts. So let's kind of like get into the reviews. So as I said, guys, 1 out of 5 for me means the card is pretty much unplayable. There's a few other cards I could have put in here. The Fiery Conviction for me is one of those cards that this could be like the Storm of Fire for Sisters. So if you could build a wide board and then you could kind of like go all in, this could be kind of like a slightly expensive Storm of Fire. But the one of the biggest problems I've got with this card is that it's 4 energy, and most of the time all it's doing is giving the +2, and to get that kind of value from 4 energy, you've kind of got to have a pretty wide board already, and quite honestly, it's like you're probably already winning the game if you're doing that. So it very much is like a win more card. And then the heal element sort of like doesn't really make sense to me much, because it's like, at the end of the day, if you're playing this card, you're playing it to probably win the game, right? And so therefore the heal doesn't matter. And then the other part of that is it costs 5 faith points in order to get the heal anyway. So I just think this is an unplayable card, a waste of time. Now, Defenders of the Faith I'm pretty sad about. This is, most factions have one of these cards, don't they, where you get to play multiple units down, and the only one that's kind of like good is the Tau one. And the main reason for that is that Tau one's giving you access to 3 cost units, whereas all the others really only give you access to 2 cost units. Now, the thing that's going for Defenders of the Faith in theory is, as I already said, in order to generate faith, it's good to have multiple units that can pray, right? And so the Defenders of Faith in theory gives you that. It's also pretty good if you play Aeldari on 5 and then you play Defenders of Faith on 6. Aeldari prays, they all get +1 health, so that's kind of nice. Then that means they're more likely to survive. Then when they pray, they get shield. So that's a really nice combination, but like that's going to happen like very rarely. And the other thing is that the Battle Sisters, you know, the 3 units that you get when you play it on 6, they're not particularly impressive, and by energy 6, turn 5, whatever, you know, they're going to get taken out very easily at that point. So I find this card to be kind of like just a bit of a waste of time, to be honest. The next one I've got is the Shrine Bombardment. Now, funnily enough, these two cards, Defense of the Faith and Shrine of Bombardment, I did have, oh no, I'm thinking about a different card. Sorry, this is the offense card, isn't it? Which says when a player earns a skull, stun one troop from each player. I mean, like, depending which warlord you're playing, like, most of the time you don't want to be being an offense card. You don't want to be really like leaning into Sister's kind of control strategy, right? Like trying to slow the game down, trying to play for faith, that type of thing. Like, unless you're playing maybe Imatech control or something, I just think this is like not something that's going to work in your favor. Dominion is just a crap card. Like, let's be honest, guys. It's got three health. It's not a flyer. It's only got 2 melee. It's easy to trick, and that Blast 2 is just a pipe dream. It's never ever going to see the light of day. So I find this to be really poor. The only time it could be potentially playable is if you really we're playing like the flank units and you really wanted to kind of build some sort of blast build. But I think that would be very memey, and quite honestly, guys, in a kind of like, you know, constructed competitive deck, this is unplayable. Same can be said for Hospitality. I mean, for 4 energy, these are just terrible stats. Really easy to cheat by E4. E5, and again, it's got a prayer. It's like it's never going to get to pray, and even if it did get to pray, heal 2 to a unit for these stats is just not good. This is a card that probably needs its stats buffing pretty considerably, I would suggest. Now, the one I'm actually most sad about is actually Shrine World. Shrine World is one of those cards that when I first saw the reveal, I was like, ooh, I am super excited about this. It kind of reminds me of like the Reclaim the Stars from the Aeldari. It should be like the Reclaim the Stars of the Adepta Sororitas. The problem with this card is that most times it is a draw 3 cards for 6, which is terrible. You know, in this game, you've got to think like ultramarines. They have the Hero's Respite, right? It costs 2 energy to draw 2 cards. So we're paying an extra 4 energy for 1 card, which is just shocking. That's not good enough. You're going to lose way too much tempo for doing that. Now, obviously, if we can lower the cost by 2, different story. Card becomes good. However, we need 8 faith. And again, you're going to see a consistent theme as we go through this. 8 faith is just in the current faith system, in the current way in which the reality of the game's playing out. It's like it's a pipe dream, guys. Like, it is never going to happen. And unfortunately, to me, just makes what could be a really cool card, it makes it super unplayable. I think that faith would need to come down considerably for this card to be any good. Alternatively, you just kind of keep it at that, and you make the cost of the card much cheaper. So unfortunately for me, they are the kind of 1 out of 5 pretty unplayable cards in the faction. Next up, we've got the bad cards, the 2 out of 5s. Now, I think Celestian's kind of like a bit of a trap card, right? Like, you look at it and you think, if you ever get to just kind of start going off praying and shielding with this, it could be really good. But the reality is, guys, you're paying 3 energy for something that has 3 health and 1 melee attack. Like, this is super easy to cheat, and it is going to die. Like, it is going to die. Most of the warlords can do 3 themselves, whether it's, you know, Zephyrblade or Imatech or Moran or Neurophobe or Storm Lord, a Swarm Lord. Like, so many can just kill this outright. It's a very bad card. The Immolator is the same. Like, the Immolator looks really cool, but again, for 8 energy, it actually doesn't have like great offense stats. It's really there to be. It's an anti go wide unit, right? It's an AoE unit, and the problem is with that Sisters already have some pretty good AoE. So what you're kind of needing at the 8 drop is something that can help you deal with other bigger units a little bit, and I think the Immolator's just a little bit slow. Now, the one exception to this, and it's always the case with these big units, right, is if you give it flank. That's been true of all the other factions, so you could run the 2-drop stratagem that gives flank. But in reality, in most games, that's not going to happen, and you're just dropping this on 8 and it does nothing. So I think the Immolator's a bad card overall. I also think that people may disagree with me on this one. I actually think the Paragon Warsuit's a bad card too. I think this is a bit of a trap card. Like, It's another one of those where you look at it and you go, it's actually got pretty good stats for 8 energy. But the problem is it's 8 energy, and as we keep saying with these late game cards, you drop this card. First of all, in order to gain Vanguard, which it absolutely needs at 8 energy, you need 6 faith, which again, I am not confident we're going to have 6 faith at all by turn 8. And then the other thing is that its ability relies on triggering when you gain faith. So if you think about that, guys, you're playing this down on turn 8, and then how many more turns do you need to play in the game beyond that point and successfully prey on those turns where you're going to even be able to trigger that ability to do 4 damage? I just think that it's just super slow, and in fact that is actually something, that is a tagline I would give to this faction. It's super slow, way too slow, and especially probably more than any other CCG I've ever played, or I don't know if it's more than any, but it's certainly high up there. It's very much a tempo game, and so Paragon Warsuit just does not fit well with that. Sister Repentia, I think, is also a little bit of a trap card. Potentially this could be better than I'm giving it, but I don't think so. I think that only 4 health. Often with Penitence, you want to be triggering Penitence. So, you know, that would put this thing down to 3 health. And, yeah, it gives you +2 melee attack. You know, maybe in a very heavy Chaos or Tyranny meta, you could see this potentially. But I just think that it's going to trade for free. Your opponent's just going to range attack it to death, and it's going to have done nothing, and now you're massively behind on board in the early game, which is the last thing this faction wants to be. So overall, I think that is a bad card. Ethereal Stern is also a bad card. It's an epic, so it's super disappointing that it's a bad card. This is a card that needs a bit of help. It's cool that it has camouflage. I do think that's pretty cool. It gives it almost like some form of like immediate effect, but you know, even if it does survive, then the prey is not that good actually. 1 to 3 is very random. If you just do 1 after praying and you don't attack, you're not trading with a 6-drop to do 1 damage. What was the point? Like the only thing you can say is, like, obviously with camouflage it can just stay there and keep doing that, but I think keep dealing damage without being your opponent being able to use hard removal, so it becomes a bit like a damage engine, and I'll get that, and that's a good concept, but 1 to 3 is not going to cut it. I'd like to see that be something like 3 to 4 or 2 to 4 or some. 1 to 3 is not good enough. Maybe even the stats could be do with a buff as well. Now the Simulacrum Celestium doesn't have too bad stats for a 5-drop, to be honest, and having that 6 health at 5 is very good, but the prey effect is terrible here, like giving +1/+1 till the next turn. That's just shocking. That should be a permanent +1/+1, or it should be +1/+1 and +1 armor would be quite good. Or I've seen some people say maybe +1/+1 to all units. I don't know if that would just be a bit too powerful. I'd kind of like to see it give maybe +1/+1 to a friendly unit. I'm like, maybe give it like either 1 armor, or maybe do something with prayer. Like maybe it puts it automatically into prayer, or it generates 1 faith, something like that. I mean, right now this card is just bad, and that's why it's where it is. Now the big 2 in the middle, I'm gonna say that the Battle Sister sadly is a bad card again. I mean, it's probably better than like the Orc Boy or the is it actually? No, it's not better than the Orc Boy, because that's got better synergy. Probably better than the Fire Warrior out of Tau. But these standard units, these mainstay units, I wish they'd be a bit more playable. Fortunately, this is not going to cut it. It's just the one thing that's kind of good design about it is that, like, there is an advantage of praying, and the stats then get better. So on the defense, your opponent's going to take it out, but on the defense, then it's got better for the trade. So there is a kind of positive synergy there. But overall, I just think it's way too slow again. Now, Junith is also, sadly, a bad card. Now, when I first looked at this, I thought, oh, this is going to be a really good card, because pumping out a sister every single turn, it made me immediately think of Galen, and you think, oh, this is going to be like uber tempo, it's going to be super powerful. You've got cards in there like the Dominator that basically can pray and give a unit Vanguard every turn. And I was thinking, Junith can just pump her sister out, and that just puts Vanguard on it every turn. It becomes almost like the Necron, a better Necron warrior in a sense. But the reality is that Galen is very different, because when Galen puts out Storm Guardian, the Storm Guardian can be taken out, but it takes the attention of a trade away from the Warlord or something else. So that's one thing it does well. But then the thing is that your opponent wants to take it out, but in taking it out, it leaves you with the stone, so it's almost like a win-win situation for you with the Storm Guard. It's like, if it doesn't get taken out, you've got another unit which you can attack with, get shuriken and damage, and then get the stone anyway. So your opponent has to take it out, but then in taking it out, it gives you resource in the stone. When you take out a Battle Sister, you don't gain faith. In fact, that would probably be a really good ability of a Battle Sister. Like, it should say something like pray +1/+1, and then once it dies, it gives you +1 faith. I think that would be pretty themed, pretty cool, that the Battle Sister's almost sacrificed herself, willing to die, knowing that she's going to get the faith. I think that would be pretty cool. But as it currently stands, the way that the Battle Sister and Junith works, I just don't think that she's offering you much. It's also not even really like tempo, because it's like you're not using the Battle Sister to trade and to you're not playing it like a tempo play, are you? It just seems like fundamentally mechanically broken for me, and for that reason they're both in the bad section. Now, Holy Fire is a defense card. It says give +1 melee to your Warlord and adjacent troops this turn. I don't know why you'd do that. I mean, yeah, cool, you can win a trade once in a game where you've got a Warlord and 2 troops already down. You're probably winning if you've done that anyway. But why would you pick this over the other defense cards that are way better than this? Quite frankly, this is probably unplayable. I don't even know why it's in bad, to be honest. Now, the Imperial Creed. Now, this is the card I was thinking of earlier. This is an interesting one. I've got it down as a bad card, right? But there is an interesting idea where, like, say you play the 6-drop where you get 3 sisters down, something that allows you to go wide quick, and then you play this, and what it can do is it can actually buy you that turn then to get multiple prayers off. But again, it's another one of these kind of combos that sounds like funky in theory. It sounds kind of interesting, but in reality, it's just a pipe dream. And ultimately, this 8, it's another one of these 8 faiths. You're never going to get that. So the refill 3 energy, forget about it. So you're paying 5 energy to stun 3 units. Now, yes, that buys you a turn. It has good synergy with the, is it Divine Intervention, the board clear. But outside of that, you're just losing tempo, right? Like, okay, your opponent can't attack, but he still can build his board, and you've just spent 5 energy doing nothing to develop yours. So you basically just fall further behind with Imperial Creed, and you just delay the inevitable by a turn. So I think it's a bad card. Now, the Retributor is one that is probably a little bit kind of like, I'm kind of a little bit like, this potentially could be a 3. Right, I've put it down as a 2, but it potentially could be a 3. So I found this card hard to judge, and I've gone up and down. I at one point thought this was like a 4. Like when I first saw this, I thought this is going to be good, because I'm a huge fan of when I see something that instantly affects the board like this, where you deal 3 damage. I think that is very powerful in a game that's ultimately based around tempo. That's why I said that the Havoc was the best card out of the Chaos release, which turned out to be true, because I just know from multiple CCGs that when you have an effect like that, it's not like that particularly sexy and clever, but it's very impactful, it's very effective. Now, the problem with the Retributor is the faith system's broken again. So if we play this and we haven't generated 3 faith, which, believe it or not, specifically by E4, which is only turn 3, that's very, very likely you haven't generated that. So now you're just playing a terribly statted card down for 4 energy, and you can't afford to not play it, because you just fall even further behind on tempo. And so that gives you this horrible degree of randomness. Like, do you keep it in a mulligan? Do you not? If you've already got a 2 or a 3 drop, normally you would, but in then you like they're throwing it away, and then you'd be thinking, well, why am I running this as a 4-drop then? And then the other element is another random element, is the 3 damage itself, which, you know, it can hit the enemy, which is obviously good if you're trying to play a burn deck, but quite honestly, the Sisters doesn't really work that way, so there isn't really a burn deck that works. So that kind of hitting the Warlord aspect of the ability is pointless, so you kind of want it to hit troops and help you trade, and there's just no guarantee where it's going. So I actually think that Retributor is ultimately, in how it's in the current guise and in the current way that Faith generates, I actually think this is a bad card. Now Celestian, I've just realized I've kind of duplicated, so it's still a bad card since I talked about it 2 minutes ago. I'm not going to say any more on that. Raging Storm, the first troop deployed each turn has -1 health. This is an offense card. I'm going to say this is a bad card, and I mean that from the point of this is a terribly bad design card. Like, obviously if you're playing against Sisters, to be fair, this should probably be a 4 or a 5, because if you're playing against Sisters, you should play this card, because it really messes Sisters up, particularly the Faith building Warlords, like not the Control, not Morven Val, but the others. It's actually a really good card, so probably in the way that we reviewed the other cards, this probably should be a 4, but I'm putting it 2 because I think it's a bad card, because it's a terribly bad card for the game. A little bit like the Tau card that nerfs Marker Lights. I don't know why we're doing this all of a sudden as offense cards. I think they've just not got offense cards right in this game at all. They go from being like incredibly memey to just incredibly like game breaking. It's almost like not worth playing the game when you've got an offense card like this. It's just silly. So it's a terrible card. It really needs redesigning. Blade of Faith is, I think this is a bad card. Now, it's got the potential to be an insane value, right? And if you play, so we've got, for example, we've got plenty of cards that for 2 energy, for example, deal 3 damage, like the Pulse, right? The Pulse card in Tau, for example, does that. So I think for 3 energy for 3 is expensive. It's really expensive, and it only affects troops, so we can't even use it for burn on the Lord. Now obviously if for 3 energy it repeats itself and does 6, that's very, very good value. Problem comes back to the current Faith system. In 2 to 3 weeks time, this review might not hold up, because if they've adapted the Faith system and it's a lot easier to get, this could easily become a 4 out of 5 card, guys. But in the current system, getting 5 Faith built up to get that extra effect is just too unreliable, and therefore it's not good value to pay 3 energy for a deal 3 damage to an enemy troop only, and that's why I've got it in the bad cards. Okay, so let's move on to the 3 out of 5s, and these cards are either okay, you know, they're situationally good, but they're kind of like okay. You know, they're not blowing, they're not mind blowing, they're kind of average. They're not bad. So we can't say that they're bad cards, but they're not particularly good either. They're just sort of sitting there on the fence, and we've got quite a few of those in the 3-drop. Now the Crusader, I'm just going to move this down a little bit here. Move me down a little bit. There we go. The Crusader is a good card when you get it from other cards, like the Missionary, for example, that can get it. That's when Crusader is very, very good. But playing this as a 2-drop itself, I would say it's not bad, but it's very meh. And I actually think when it comes to deck building, which is a fun thing to do in this faction, I just don't think you've got the slots to be putting Crusaders in, quite frankly. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of like it's okay, and if your collection is quite new, by all means put these in, but as you start to get a fuller collection, I think you'll be dropping Crusaders. Now the Missionary, I'm a little bit higher on this card, I think, than maybe other people are. It's a strange card, because for 4 energy, obviously we can just drop this, and it can be traded. We can just trick the trade on the range attack, only 2 damage coming back at it, and 4 health's not particularly great at 4, and so it can seem like a big waste of time. However, I do think that there are, if you are playing on tempo and you are ahead on board, then this card is much better than if you're behind. Also, like with like things like Vanguard units or like Erica, for example, giving the missionary the +1 health from her praying, so that this becomes 5 health. Actually, it can be pretty sneaky, and its ability is very good, right? The talent is very good, and the strike is also very, very good. I've found in practice that this card's actually done okay for me, so I think this is okay. It's definitely a 4-drop. 4-drops aren't strong in this faction, and I think if you haven't yet given it a go, I think you should give Missionary a go. It's not bad. It's not a bad one to drop proactively on E4. Now the Mortifier I also think is okay, mainly because it's got pretty good stats, right? For 7 energy. Nice 9 health, that's very, very good, and I like the 6/6. I'm a big fan of units where you can't trick the trade very easily. I think that adds value for me, and also the pendants is like okay as well. Like dealing the 2 damage to the enemy warlord's pretty good. You've got to watch out in the mirror matches, because obviously sometimes you don't want to hit the enemy warlord if they've put the legendary unit on the warlord. So, but overall, I mean, like for those stats for 7 energy, it's okay. It's not better than okay. It's not a 4. It's not a 5, because ultimately it's not doing a lot on the turn that you play it, and it does cost 7 energy. So it's getting to like that top end of like really needing to do something for that cost. But I think it's, for me, that's why it falls in that kind of, it's okay. It's like acceptable. It's not bad, but it's not good either. The Exorcist is also there. Now the thing with the Exorcist is it's one of the more exciting cards. I wish, if you just take the 8 faith off it, right? This would be where I wish 10 drops were in the game for Warpforge. I think that the late game units are massively underpowered in this game, like in terms of how immediate of effect they have. And I almost just think for 10 energy it should just deal 4 damage to all enemies. I think that's where the power level should be, but it's not where the power level is in the game. And 8 faith is a massive requirement to hit to get that. And if you haven't got that, like as I said earlier, if you've got 7 faith, the Exorcist is a big pile of, it does nothing. It just is a big 10 drop that play on the board. It doesn't block anything. You just fell 10 E behind, basically. Probably lost the game next turn. So it's a really bad card. Of course, if you meet that requirement, that is a very cool, the Flame Strike, deal 4 damage to all enemies, including the enemy warlord, is really cool. So what I'd really like to see on this is that faith reduced dramatically. I just think 8 faith is way too much. And I saw the Ecclesiarch come up with this idea of, or share an idea, I don't think it was his, but the more faith that you've banked, the more the damage of the AoE does. I think that's brilliant. That would be a really, really cool change for the Exorcist. Great artwork, by the way. Moment of Grace has to be okay, because I think about cards like Adrenal Surge. What Moment of Grace does is it gives us, particularly in the early game, it gives our warlord the ability to get rid of bigger units. Ultramarines play a Stern Guard, and we get +2/+2. We can kind of remove it with our warlord. Even flyers, right? It allows you to deal with flyers. It doesn't get, the only thing is, like in Tyranids obviously you've got Synapse, so Adrenal Search is way better because it can affect multiple units. And the other thing is that this has a really expensive kind of secondary ability. Drawing the card is nice, but for 5 faith, again, a Moment of Grace is better to use as an early game removal so you don't fall behind. And so in the early game you're never going to have that 5 faith, so it kind of doesn't make sense. So I can't really say that it's a bad card. It's not a sexy card. It's functionally good, but I can't really say it's a good card either. Inspiring Oratory, I think like this is a card I want to try more. Giving Shield and Vanguard is quite a nice ability. I just find that, what are the units I want to play this on, right? Like, this is not a faction at the minute where I'm running lots of like big beefy units. Some of the bigger beefy units are already, they've got Vanguard. I mean, things like these, like the Celestian Superior Canoness, would be good choices for it, but these cards aren't there yet, so it's just not like really got anything to go on right now, to be honest. Now the sister, I actually really like the Novit Novitiate, I don't know how you say it. I actually like this card. I really like this design. It reminds me of a Gwent card a little bit. Deploy one sister. I wish... Do you know what I'd really love this to do as well is like deal one damage to an enemy troop. And I wish it'd deal 1 damage as well. But I do really like it because I think in Erica, this is a really good card. Like for 1 energy, you give her the +1 health, so the enemy warlord can't deal with it. And even if they do, like the directing of resources to take this out when it's got 3 health, but only 1 energy, is really good. And I've had some games where I've like just flooded the entire board with this card. So I really like this card. And I really love the design of it, particularly for a 1-drop. I really like the design of it. So, but it is, you know, it is only good in Erica. It's not good in the others, and it can be taken out. So I can't give it any more than a 3, but I do. It's one of my favourite 3s for sure. Now the Magifier. Now the thing with this card is it on paper has a powerful ability, right? To give flank to other friendly troops seems really powerful, but you've got to think like you're playing this on 5. It doesn't have very good stats, to be honest, so it's kind of quite easy to lose out on the trade by that point in the game, and then you've got to survive that trade, and then the next turn you've got to pray so you don't get to trade again in order to give something flank. Now obviously the flank is then immediate, so that's kind of cool. But for me, I think this card is one I'd like to test more, but I'd say it's okay. The other thing is that a lot of the 6 drops that we're playing actually have flank, right? The 2 of the best 6 drops in the faction both have flank, so it kind of doesn't make sense as to where it falls on the curve. I don't think I can say it's a bad card because it is a powerful ability and it's not shocking stats, but it's certainly not good stats. So I'm kind of like got it in that meh, it's okay phase. And similar for Celestian Superior, I'm kind of got it in the same kind of meh. The thing with this card is I can't give it any lower than a 3 because it actually has good stats for its cost, right? It has pretty good stats, can't trick the trade. And, you know, if it does survive, then praying to deploy Celestian is nice, right? You get this, this kind of like Vanguard unit. Problem is like when you've got a body like this that then doesn't have Vanguard, can you afford to not be trading at this point in the game? And this is where I think Prey falls down on, again, just more fundamentally the kind of design philosophy here falls down and is disappointing, because you don't want the big cards to have Prey abilities because, well, first of all, you need them to trade. What's the point in having the big 6/6 and the 8 if it can't swing and trade? Right, and your opponent could just ignore it if he wanted, because like, you know, they haven't got he hasn't got Vanguard. So the other thing is, do you even want late game cards to be praying? Because then how many more turns have you got to go to get that kind of like benefit? So I think late game cards should be more payoff. They should more be the cards that say, you know, if you've got 2 faith, do this. If you've got 4 faith, do this. If you've got 6 faith, do this. They should be paying off on the faith, not necessarily they shouldn't be the prayers. So I just think that's like more like fundamental design philosophy issue with this card. Canoness is a card that I initially got quite enthusiastic about and tried quite a lot, and then I just kind of realized that it's just not that good, because like, first of all, I think these should be the other way around. Like the level 1 power up should be the armor, the level 2 should be the bonus to the stats. That would be much better. Bring it a little bit more in line with like something like a Carnifex. This is kind of like, that's why I liked it, because I thought, oh, this is the Carnifex of the faction. But actually, to have 6 faith to get the armor, again, it's just way too much. A Carnifex we can play turn 2 guys, right? With the disruption pool, if we're going second as a Tyranid player, turn 2 we can drop a Carnifex with armor. You cannot drop this card on turn 2 with armor, and so it's actually a leagues away from a Carnifex. And I'd like to see perhaps a 3rd level to it. I'd really love to see like 3 levels of faith become a design thing for the sisters, and I'd like to see the armor get the 1st level rather than the 2nd there. Now, the Trial of Suffering is a card I'm going to be honest, I haven't used enough yet. I think on paper this could be quite interesting. There might it seems to me like you would want this in to trigger pendant units in non-Morven Val decks, right? So if you're using Erica or the other one, what's her name? Just talked about it, didn't we? Junith, that's it. If we're using Erica or Junith and we want to use some of the pendant, this is a good card for it. I don't think it's a bad card. I don't know whether it's going to make it though. Like, design space is quite tight when you're building decks with sisters. There's and getting that balance between stratagems and units is important, obviously. And whether this makes it over some of the other powerful stratagems, I'm not sure it is going to, unless it's in very specific decks, as I just mentioned. So I can't really say it's a bad card because it's also only 3 faith to get this 2 armor. That's pretty good. Like, yeah, I think this card is okay. It could be situationally good, so that's why I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. Miraculous Feat is another one of those where it's like, you really need it. It's basically like Tau giving shield in a way, right? Like, Onvar costs 3 now to give a unit shield, so you'd put that on a crisis suit or something and get a free trade, and that's kind of how I see this card. So it's kind of quite average. There is obviously this extended effect if you've got the 5 faith where you extend it till the end of your next turn, so it could be quite powerful in the late game. But it would be the late game, because to get 5 faith is not easy, and you're not going to have it anytime soon. So overall, I just don't think this card's going to make most decks, because it's just too situational. And I can see a lot of games where the games I play tested, it just sat in my hand and I just wished it was something else. So I kind of don't think that this card is great, but I can't say it's bad, because you know, even just having like a trade with a big mid-size unit versus their mid-size unit, that can swing games. That can be a tempo trade that swings a game dramatically. So I'm gonna kind of put it towards the kind of bottom of the meh. The Disruption Sanctuary. Now, this is an offense card, and it says at the end of each player's turn, if they have no energy left, deal 1 damage to their units, to one of their units at random. So this is like trying to punish like really efficient decks. But I just think that if you're playing against sisters, you probably want to be the one doing that. Like, not using all your energy is not necessarily the worst thing for sisters, but for other decks it is. So I can't see it like being outstanding in any way, but maybe certain matchups, then this would be fine. Sister Superior has like okay stats. I mean, it's very okay. It's not great. It can't be tricked. It will die because it's only got 4 health, but it will probably deal the 4 damage back to whatever hits it with. So it's okay. It's not a bad card, and the prey is okay as well. Like, you know, to just sort of sit and still do damage is better than nothing. I kind of wish it was deal 2 damage, to be honest. I just don't know that this is. The 4 drops are really bad. I don't know that this really makes. It's not going to make most of my decks, but it might see some play. It might see some play just because 4 drops aren't that great. Now, the Furious Reprisal is also interesting because giving flank is powerful. Every single faction has this, right? We have this stratagem that allows you to give flank, and it always seems more powerful when you just read it in a vacuum than what it looks like in reality. Because let's say you put this on a 4 cost unit, there's actually 6 energy you've spent then, isn't it, to give it flank. Now this does say if it's damaged, give blast 3 to it. So obviously playing this in a Morven Val deck would be where you'd want this, because Morven can pray, damage something by 1, and then you slap this on it, giving it flank and blast. And so it's got potentially to be pretty good, situationally good in Morven decks. But I also think like you've got to have the units that it makes sense to put it on. So I don't know. Like, obviously playing this on something like Celestial when she comes and she's invulnerable, that's pretty cool too. I just think it's okay. Seraphine is another one that I think is just like okay. Like, it's flying, so that's pretty good. 4/4, kind of like okay with that at 4. It's not It's not amazing, but it's not bad. You know, it's not bad because it is flying, but it does require that 3 faith to gain flank, and there will be times, particularly again on E4, where you just haven't got the 3, and that's where I think suddenly it becomes a bad card. So it's very situational, right? Like if you've got the faith, it's pretty good situationally. It's all right. It's not going to set the world on fire, but it's all right. If you haven't got the faith, it's bad. So it's kind of like sitting in that 2.5 to 3 space. I think it just creeps into kind of 3, into sort of meh, okay for me. Now we've got the Relics of St. Catherine and the Triumph of St. Catherine. Now, I want to say that the Relics of St. Catherine, it's kind of interesting because if you want to go down the faith route in the current system, I think this card's essential. I think you've got to play it. Now, I don't think it's particularly good, and you are losing a lot of faith. Now, sorry, you're losing a lot of tempo, right, when you play this. Now, a lot of factions have a card like this, right? Like the Orkz have one that gives the armor. I was going to say imitate, but Necrons have now gained their one, the Immortal Pride. The Tower, things like the Savior Protocols for 4, which makes the drones cheaper. They're basically these cards that cost like 4 or 5 energy. They do nothing when you play them, but then for the rest of the game, you claw that value back for the tempo that you lose. This is difficult because Sisters aren't Orcs, right? Sisters don't really have great ways to sort of claw back. So you have to be much more careful about when you play this. But I actually think in a current faith build, you probably have to play 1 or if not 2 of these. You've seen these cards we've talked about, guys, that require 8 faith. How the hell are you going to get 8 faith? Well, this is one way of helping you get close to it. So it's like a necessary card, but it's not a great card. I just think that in faith builds you kind of need it at the minute because the fundamental way of getting faith is a bit broken. Now the Triumph for St. Catherine's interesting. She's a fun card for sure. She's a bit of a beast, bit of a tank, right? Like you play her for 9. Obviously she's really expensive, but she's got a great body in terms of like the 2 armor and the 9 health. And then it says when a friendly unit prays. So that's the kind of like immediate impact on the board that she has, which she can play her. Other units that are still down can pray and they gain armor. And the big one here, of course, is that includes your Warlord. So your Warlord does gain armor, which is very good. We all know how powerful that is. We've played with the Orcs now for a while. However, this isn't happening until at least E9. So unlike the Orcs where it's happening from 5, for example, this isn't happening until E9. So it's like, how much are you really benefiting from that? I think it's probably going to end up being a little bit slow, but she might make it into the Erica builds. I really wish that she perhaps could give Vanguard to a unit. I think having it herself might be too powerful. I'm not sure, but I think giving it to a unit might be a good way of beefing her up a little bit. Anyway, we're not here to buff cards, we're just giving you a review of where I think it is. So I think that's it for my 3. So let's move on to the 4s, which are kind of like the good cards. These are the cards that are kind of staples. Now, towards the top of the 4 is Morven Val for me. Morven Val is actually a good lord, really well designed, big, 40 health. The prayer is really good because dealing 1 damage when you're being passive in praying is actually brilliant, because the downside of praying is that you're not trading, but dealing damage means you can contribute to the trade. So I find in practice that is a really valuable impact. So I think that's really good. And also the talent's pretty useful too. Like the talent, it's like the old Gazgul, +1/+1, and it's only for 1 turn, but it's really good, right? Because when you just need to trade with something and have that buff, that deal with a flyer, for example, or just something with 3 health. You've got that press on case of emergency, press for health. That 2E. So I think Morven Val overall is really good. I also think that the dealing 1 damage, obviously triggering your own pendant units is huge, absolutely huge, and really unlocks a lot of the power in this faction, because some of the pendant units are just fantastic, as we're going to talk about. And so I think Morven Val is a super good warlord. Really, I'm really close to giving Morven a 5, to be honest. And when the faction does get some buffs, I think Morven's going to be a bit of a powerhouse, to be honest. Now, Erica is also very, very good. I had her in the 3 at first, but I think I was thinking more like in terms of like where she is right now in the meta and the decks. But actually, in terms of just the Warlord ability, she's really, really good. She's not far behind Morven, because giving 1 health is not the same as heal 1 health. Like, giving 1 health is superb. There are a lot of like understated cards in the faction. Being able to give +1 health to a unit that is wanting to pray, for example, that extra point of survivability is huge. And not to mention, she can heal herself, so the fact that she's got 35 health, which is often a problem for a lot of 35 HP warlords, not so much for Erica, because she can keep healing herself, so that's fantastic. And then on top of that, her talent is very powerful. So once she has met the got 4 faith, she's basically dealing 3 damage for 2 every turn. And that is really good, guys. Like, that can go on the enemy warlord, that can lead to burn. That is really good removal. It's consistent, you have it every turn. That's powerful. Obviously, you need to get the 4 faith. That's the kind of drawback, and that's not easy right now. But I think with a few tweaks, Erica's going to become pretty powerful and also a lot of fun to play. Now, the Battle Sister Gunner, I think, is a good card, a really well designed card, particularly with the prey. Like, this is what prey should be like. It's like, I'm praying, so I'm not trading, which is a massive drawback in a game like Warpforge. But don't worry, you're dealing 2 damage, so you are trading. So it's like countering the prey drawback. Really like this card. I think it's a solid 2-drop, probably the best or second best, and that's why I'm giving it 4. The Minion Superior is also pretty good, because again, dealing 2 damage as a rally effect is just good, especially at 5e. Like, it's really good, and the stats are kind of like okay. Like, it's hard to trick the trade on this card. It's got okay, sort of decent-ish stats. It's not great stats, but it's not bad stats either. But the biggest thing is being able to deal 2 damage for only 2 faith points is actually very, very achievable, and yeah, it's a good card. Now, the Right Restoration is a legendary card, and it says choose a friendly troop that died this turn and deploy it. This is one of those cards where there's going to be some turns where this card's just absolutely brilliant, just insanely powerful. But there's also going to be a lot of turns where it's just sitting in your hand and you wished it was something else. I've seen people say that it should extend beyond the current turn. I don't know about that. I'm not sure how I'd change it. But to really get value, right, you've kind of got to see this as like, you need a decent unit, don't you? So you really want something that's kind of like probably 6 energy or more, because it's almost like you're just playing that again, but for only 3 energy. So it is good. It's in the right situation, it's going to be a super powerful effect, but it's also going to, like I say, you're probably going to sit in your hand for a while. Now, Divine Intervention is one that people are probably going to think I'm crazy. I feel like this is the one people might disagree with the most. I think people might look at this card and think it's definitely a 5, BJ. What are you talking about? This is S tier. I would just say this, right? Like, I think this card is a 5 energy, no mucking about. Okay, no mucking about is S tier. It's a 5. But I think that this is slightly under that. I think this is a 4. You are never, or very, very rarely, getting the destroy all enemy troops ability. If you do, fantastic, and of course that's when the card's exceptional. And again, in a few weeks time, or if a few buffs from now, balance patches, this could be S tier, off the charts, insane. But in the current system of how faith works and how easy it is to generate faith, it's just a poor man's mucking about, and for a legendary card that's a little bit underwhelming. So it's still a powerful ability, but I wouldn't say it's like in the S tier right now. So that's for me why this is a 4. Okay, so now we've got the Zephyrim, which is like the veteran Stormboy people have compared it to. It's not as good because Stormboy has better health, it also has an ability, but it is still powerful. Like, a flanking flying unit with 6 melee attack is a very powerful effect in this game, because most flyers don't have good melee attack, so it can trick trades with enemy flyers, and it's just one of the more consistent ways of just trading and keeping up with tempo. So I'm not giving it a 5 just because Veteran Stormboy does exist. That's a 5. But you could argue that within the bounds of this faction it is a 5. But I just think like it's just a really solid 4. Like it's like towards the top end of 4.5ish. Yeah, I'm happy to where it is. The Celestian Sacristan is an interesting card. Kind of enjoy it. It's a bit like the Lich Guard or the Blade Veteran, perhaps is a better comparison in terms of its stats. And yeah, it's the big beefy Vanguard. You can kind of pray. One of the things I quite like is like with Vanguard, you don't need to attack because they've got to attack you. Obviously, though, the problem is that they can attack his range attack, but this is a bigger unit where I can actually see you praying with it because it has Vanguard. And then obviously every time you do that, it gets more armor. So this card's pretty cool, and having things, lords like Erica and Junith, basically giving it health back as well, is pretty powerful. So I really like this card. I think it's a good card, and definitely gonna want to build that into a lot of your decks. Now the Dialogus, I'm not sure about. I wasn't sure to give this a 3 or a 4. It doesn't have great stats for trading, but it does have 5 health for 4, which is good. So it's likely to have a decent chance of sticking around if you play it on 4E. And then to give Vanguard, I do think this is a great card in the in the Junith builds. I already mentioned being able to guarantee a sister a body every single turn that you can then put Vanguard on and keep protecting the Dialogus. She's a card that hides behind everything else and keep kind of like generating, and not just putting a Vanguard on, but then making it difficult to disrupt her own prayer, which obviously leads to faith points. So I think this card is probably, as decks get figured out and as buffs happen and stuff, I think this card's going to get quite powerful. Right now it's like okay-ish to good. So it's like in the 3.5 to 4, but it'll become a solid 4. Yeah. Now Dogmata is a card I really like. I think from what I've kind of picked up, hearing other people talk about it, I seem to be a little bit higher on this card than other people, but I think this is pretty good. I think it's, look guys, like it gives you automatic faith, which is very powerful because faith's very powerful and really hard to get, and this is something your opponent can do nothing about. And for that alone, that is a powerful effect. The other thing is that I've had this card like swinging with 10 melee attack and stuff like, you know, you can buff melee quite a bit in Sisters, and it's quite a, you know, she's got this big weapon, and yeah, she has, you know, it's a unit that your opponent kind of has to deal with, otherwise it's going to be swinging back and doing some big damage. And also the rally effect can be used to just like finish off an opponent. Like anything that's deal damage is powerful. It can also trigger obviously your own pendant engines and stuff. So I think overall it's a good card. Obviously the 3 range attack isn't great, and that's the big weakness here, but it does come with a 7 health. I think Dogmata is a pretty good card. If you haven't tried it yet, definitely go out and try it. The only thing I would say is there are quite a few 6 drops that are pretty good. We've already talked about like the Celestian there and the Zephyrim, and there's others as well. So it's just fighting for a 6 drop slot's not easy. Now the Beacon of Faith is a great card. It's a good card. Obviously it's a 4 out of 5. Giving 2 health, again, it's not heal 2, it's give 2, and that includes your Warlord, and that's guaranteed. So that in itself is very good. I'm a big fan of what's the Orc one? Ada's Nails was a really good card for the Orcs. And basically it's Ada's Nails, but it's Ada's Nails in a unit in a faction that is praying, right, and needing units to survive. So it's kind of even better, really. Now this 6 faith thing is obviously the pipe dream. It's never really going to happen, and if it did happen, then it's really powerful, but it's very unlikely. So you've got to look at this card really as just the +2 health. And that's why I don't think it's a 5, because like if that other thing was secondary ability was easy, then it would probably be a 5. Conviction of Faith is also good. I think these 2 cards, it's like which ones do you put in, how many? It's difficult because Conviction of Faith is also very good. Like all friendly units gain 2 armor until your next turn. That can really help when you're kind of like looking for that big turn of trades. And remember again, this is Warlord and it heals 2 as well. So combination of heal and armor is very good. You just got to remember it is heal, it's not give health like the Beacon of Faith. So for that reason, I find the I don't know which is better, to be honest. I found the beacon easier to manage, but I think they're both solid cards. One of the tricks with Sisters will be getting the right stratagems in the right kind of archetype and getting the right quantity. Now, the Preacher, also a pretty flexible card. Like the talent, the Hymn of Battle, is very flexible. Do you want to draw a card? Do you want to give +1 faith? Or do you want to put down a Crusader? And this is where I think you should be getting your Crusaders from the Preacher. I think there'll be some decks where just one of them is good. If you've got the 5 faith, then it gains shield, which makes it really solid because it's difficult. It's already got 3 energy, so your enemy warlord can't just trade into it. And actually having the shield as well is very good. But playing it on 2 presents a problem. And if your warlord's praying, they've got to deal with a Preacher, so you might get a free faith point out of the warlord praying. Overall, I think this is pretty good. I'm happy with a 4 out of 5 for Preacher. Devout Warriors, also a very good card draw, very reliable. I already said how disappointed I was in the 6 drop that draws cards, so this is really our main card draw. And to be honest with you, for 1 energy, drawing a troop's okay. The fact that it does say troop is what makes it okay. If it was just draw a card, I don't know that you would run it, but because it says specifically draw troop, I do think that makes quite a big difference. And the other thing is that 3 faith is not unachievable, and once you are drawing 2 troops for 1, that's fantastic value. That is like Heroes of Respite is 2 energy, draw 2, and this is draw 2 troops for 1 energy. That is a very good value card, and it's not disrupting you much, is it, for only 1 energy to just draw those options. So I think this is a solid card and will be in most decks, to be quite honest with you. Now, speaking of solid cards, I think the Death Cult Assassin's great. It's probably the best 3-drop. Certainly it's in the top 2, and it's a weird card because obviously you say, well, BJ, it's got 3 health and 0 range attack, so how difficult is it to just kill that? Well, it's true, but even there you will still deal 2 damage back, so it's not bad. I don't think it's like, it's nowhere near like it's not S tier, it's not like, but you know, if you play this and you kind of like get 2 pings with it, or you get to attack, or you ping it with your own warlord and stuff like that, there's lots of tricks you can do with Death Cult, including some AoE tricks which we'll get to. Overall, I do think that the dealing 2 damage, being able to deal with stealth things and things like that as well, it is powerful. Prayer, I absolutely love. I think this card's brilliant. I think putting this on your warlord first turn when you pray is just like, what does your enemy warlord do now? Because like, okay, they can attack and get rid of the shield, cool, but you still got your prayer off. So I think this is like, if you're going second and you play this first turn, you're already up to 3 faith, right? Because of the defense stratagem. So I really like prayer. I think prayer is fantastic, and I think that this is going to be like 2 of in pretty much every deck, and that's what I was saying earlier about the stratagems, right? It's like, which ones do you play? And some of them are pretty good, but they get squeezed out because you just can't fit everything in. Alright guys, so that is my 4 out of 5s. If you're liking it so far, please hit the like button, and also let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of these, if there's any of these 4s that you actually think are 3s or you think are 5s, then do let me know in the comments and let's chat about it. Alright, next up then, the S tier cards. This is what you're here for, why you play the faction, the ones that are really the game changers, the big bad cards. Now the Arcoflagellant for me is just superb. It's a really good 2-drop. I want to just say something quickly about the faith design again. The biggest problem with Arcoflagellant is that it really sits very well in a Morven Var deck, but even there, like when its penitence goes off, damaging all of the units is terrible for praying units, right? Because you basically disrupt your own prayers. Now, I don't think that should happen. Right, like think about how much more that would open up the design space for deck building if you could still play Arcoflagellant in your deck and still pray. So, like if prayer, for example, only got disrupted by attacks of 2 damage or more, then that wouldn't be affected by Arcoflagellant or little pings like Imatech or Neurothrope. I think that will be a great change to make to prayer. Yeah, so that would be my suggestion. But outside of that flaw, the Arcoflagellant is very, very good. You can come on here, you can ping it with Morven to deal 1 AoE, then you can attack doing 2 damage and guaranteeing another AoE. If you attack something that has less attack to kill you, then obviously you can do more than that. You can also combine it with things like Spirit of the Master, which we're going to get onto, to do like insane AoE clears. So Arcoflagellant is sometimes a bit of a big brain card, and a very powerful card in this game, because it's really going to help you. It's one of the few cards you've got that really helps you come from behind as well. Now Amalia, I love this card. It reminds me of cards from other games that I've played. And I really like this idea that I can play her on 3 with no rally effects. Like I could have 0 faith, and it's a 3/3 with 4 health for 3. That's good stats. That's solid stats for a 3-drop that you want to see on a 3-drop. So like as a tempo play, she's really, but as a control play, she is also potentially insane, right? Because like I've actually dealt 10 damage with her. I mean, as much as I've said how hard it is for faith to get faith up, when they sort that out, this card's going to be super OP, and I think it's really, really good. Like, we don't have much removal, like hard removal in the deck, and Amalia is definitely one of them. Saint Celestine is also very, very good. I think she's a little bit, I don't know, she is definitely an S tier card, guys. There's no way she cannot be. Like, to be a 7 health flyer with 7/7, so there's no way of tricking the trade anyway. She actually has really great stats, and then the fact that she is invulnerable full stop till the end of the next turn, and that includes Will of Gork and no mucking about, those types of spells that don't target her. Invulnerable means invulnerable. You cannot be killed, period, end of, full stop. So she is going to be on the board at the end of next turn, and that is very, very powerful. There's no faith effect to get that, so I like that. And then even when she does then trade, she has regen 2, so she can, and plus you can obviously heal from like Erica and things like that. So Celestine's just a badass kind of like trader. She's a very, very good legendary card. Now the Pendant Engine is just fantastic. It's definitely for me one of the best just kind of common cards in the faction. So if you're a beginner to the faction, then this is the card you want to be getting excited about. And the engine's just so good. Like if you're playing Morven, then you just ping this thing and it automatically has flank with 2 blast. Obviously it'd be down to 6 health, but that's just superb. We already talked about things like Arcoflagellant. You could combine with this to kind of get that blast up if you want. It's not beyond the realms of impossibility to have blast 4 the first time you swing with this, which is super powerful. Really great flanking unit. Yeah, 6 drops are good. 6 drops are good in this faction, for sure. Now the Guidance of the Saints is absolutely superb as a defense stratagem. The only problem is it's hiding behind a level 40, I believe, on the Forge, which, yeah, good luck. You're never going to see this guy, or not for a long time anyway, until people get to that level on the Forge. So you're safe for now, but in terms of when you've got it and you play it, how good is it? There's no doubt about it. This is S tier. We all know how good the Disruption pull is for the Tyranids, which is level 20 on their Forge. Getting that kind of tempo boost where you can play something that is essentially 2 energy more expensive. Wow. Yeah, Astrid, turn 2, for example. Yes, please. Now, Spirit of the Martyr is a great card. I love this card. Like, this card is another big brain card and like has so much potential. So what I love about this card is like lining things up. Really great with Morven Val, where she can have that ping, right? So that will like deal 1 damage to something and make sure that there's something with 1 health, something with 2 health, something with 3 health, so that this thing just does massive AoE damage and just clears the board, or triggers your pendants. You know, dropping this with like Arcoflagellant, for example, can help you do some massive AoE clears. It's a very, very good card, and I think that having like 2 of these is really good in a lot of decks, but certainly one of, like, if you're doing a more of a like your board building faith generating deck, then probably wouldn't want two. Maybe one spirit would be enough, because you obviously don't want to damage your own board. But certainly in the control decks, like, this card is super good, and we don't have many board clear stuff, so it's really important, I think, for that. Then of course we've got the Sacred Altar. This is the first defense stratagem that we get, and it's really good. Like we've said, how hard it is to generate faith, and this just gives you one straight away off the bat. And for me, that's why, because originally I had this as a 4 out of 5. I thought it's really good, but because faith is so difficult to generate, right now it's S tier. If faith gets easier to generate, it might go down and become more like a 3 or a 4, but right now it's like, yep, yes please, give me faith instantly, yes please. It's like essential. Now, Aeldari Thurga is just a beast. I mean, she is... You will have games where you play her and your opponent just does everything to remove her, and you'll think, well, she wasn't that great. But the reality is, like, she's got pretty good stats for a 5-drop. Exactly where you want to see that health. Her ability is just superb, right? Her ability is very good, because your opponent, including... Sorry, not your opponent. Your allies, your allied units, including your warlord, when you play Aeldari, they can pray. And when they pray, they immediately get that shield. So she's immediately sort of putting a shield on your warlord, at least. But then also when she does pray, she gives +1 health to your as well. So I think Aeldari is just a really solid mid-range kind of like unit, and really happy with that card. I also think Hollowed Martyrs is very, very good. Like this is a weird one because they sort of changed it, didn't they? Originally it was going to hit the enemy warlord, and now it kind of deals 1 damage to 2 random enemy troops. So there's things like attacking with the Hollowed Martyrs, and then it just doing those 2 pings every time your opponent warlord wants to trade with you and aggro you down. Like, they're losing value off of their units. It's really good. You just have to think that it's really good over time, right? So you have to think about the kind of chip away value over the game. It's a bit like Makari in a way. Like, sometimes, like, think, how much value did Makari give you over a game? Sometimes it's just ridiculously stupid. And I think that's the thing with Hollowed. It's like, if you get this on E4, then it's going to just give you so much value over the game. But the later in the game that you play it, it does become a little bit less potent, because, like I say, it needs time to accumulate. So I was kind of like on the fence as to, is this a 4 or is it a 5? But I think certainly in this faction I would put it as a 5 for now. I could be probably swayed to putting it down to a 4. But there are some games when you play against sisters and they put this on 4 and you just think, oh god, what am I going to do now? And last not least for me is Cleansing Flames. Like, I'm super excited about this card. I really like, particularly because I do enjoy control decks, like I really like kind of a degree of like certainty in my control tools. And you all will know the Scorcher Assault from the Orkz, which does 2 to 4 damage to an enemy and its adjacent units. So it's basically like their version of a Scorcher Assault, but I would much rather get guaranteed 3 damage to the 3 units rather than 2 to 4. Obviously 4 being a higher ceiling than this, but I would much rather settle for 3, but knowing guaranteed that that's what it is on all 3 units. And it's just a very powerful effect. Really, really good as a control tool. If you do lose tempo in the early game, really, really good at just kind of like even score, and good at dealing with stealth as well. That's another one of the main, kills a Gene Stealer, for example, instantly. So yeah. So that is it for me, guys. I think that is where we are at with Sisters. As I said, I think it's the Warlords are really well designed. It's a very fun faction, and I definitely think that with a balanced patch and a few good buffs, this could be a really, really cool faction. It could be definitely one of my favorite factions to play. Lots of different options in every single turn and lots of decisions and stuff to make. But right now I do feel like it's a little bit disappointing, just because they haven't really like executed the faith system effectively, and that's a bit sad. So you won't be seeing me playing these guys on ladder anytime soon until we do see a balanced patch, because, well, they're just not good enough, and that's sad. It saddens me to say that, but it is the truth. And I'll look forward to seeing some buffs. So thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you once again on the 8th of June Come and drop in whenever you can between 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. GMT. We're going to have loads and loads of cool challenge matches going on and some booster pack giveaways, etc, etc. So hope to see you there. Thanks for all the support, and take care. Glad to be back, and I'll see you in the next one.